And welcome, Hoosier Nation, to the 161st episode of the Hoosier Sound, where we are the official podcast of Indiana HQ. Our mission and goal is simple. We want to bring in-depth analysis and coverage for Indiana University sports to as many fans as possible across a multitude of modern platforms. We are recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on September 29th, 2020, where I am your host, Matthew Lukens, and here with me tonight is the one and only Andrew Rude. If you would like to subscribe to our podcast for free, all you have to do is search the Hoosier Sound wherever you listen to podcasts. Stay up to date with all of our social media. So please follow us at the Hoosier Sound. Well, if the Twitter's working, and at Indiana HQ, which is working. So follow us at Indiana HQ. If you're listening to it, head over to our website, indianahq.com, for everything in one place. All right, Hoosier Nation, it's time for some sports talks. Before we get into the main topics for tonight, since we have Andrew here, last week on the podcast, we covered the release of football schedule. Nathan and I gave you our predictions on the schedule. I was cautiously optimistic. Nathan was overly optimistic. So, Andrew, where do you stand on the Hoosiers going into the 2020-2021 season?
Well, Matt, first off, thanks for having me back. It's been a while. I'm in a new place, new apartment on near campus, so excited to be covering IU football again this season. Ready to go. Looking at the 2020, third version of the schedule that's been released, I'm cautiously optimistic, just like you are, Matt, because obviously looking at some of the opponents they have, they're at Rutgers versus Purdue at the end of the season, at Michigan State, and against Maryland. Those are four good wins that they're probably going to be able to achieve because I think this team's going to be a lot more improved than they were last season. They're a lot their depth's really good. They've gotten a lot of experience. Tom Allen said last year at Michigan State they were the third youngest team in Big Ten. And I really think that experience they got all of last season, getting to go to a bowl game, is really going to help translate into their performance this season. And obviously they'll have Michael Penix back, starting QB. Hopefully he stays healthy. That's going to be a really big part of the Hoosiers team this year. And it can really help them in some of those games that they really need to win if they want to have a great season. Looking at Penn State to start, that honestly, on a normal year, I would say Penn State will probably win that game. We looked at the Penn State IU game last year up in Happy Valley, and Peyton Ramsey was leading that team. No knock on Peyton Ramsey, but IU almost came out of that stadium with a win. So that was really impressive to see against a good team, but they still fell short, like IU has in the past. But entering 2020 and the COVID season, we don't know what Penn State's going to look like. They have a first-year offensive coordinator who came over from Minnesota, I believe. So we don't know what the offense is going to fully look like. There's not a lot of film since there's not going to be any non-conference to ramp it up heading into the game. So Indiana, if you show up with your depth, with the offense going like you wanted to, defense can make enough stops. Penn State is a very winnable game heading into the season. And then looking at some of the bigger games, you have home against Michigan. Could be another really big game depending on how Michigan looks heading into that game week 3. And then obviously you have at Ohio State and at Wisconsin, two very tough games. Wisconsin was originally the game that was supposed to kick off the season, which could have been a winnable game. But heading into Ohio State, Wisconsin can be very difficult. Ohio State's obviously the favorite in the Big Ten to make it to the college football playoff. And then Wisconsin's a very talented team year in and year out. So looking at this schedule, I'm kind of in the middle on how I want to predict this Hoosier team. And obviously we'll probably give our final predictions as we get closer to the Penn State game. But looking at this team could be a 500 team, 4 wins or so overall. But when you don't have that non-conference schedule, that really hurts this IU team in a bad way because a lot of it is preparation before we get into the conference season. But it also helps your young guys who are new step up against that lesser competition. Right. And when you start the season against Penn State, yes, it's at home, but you're most likely probably not going to have fans in the stands to help you out. And you're going to be going against a pretty good team that's top 10 in the nation right now. So this season, it looks very difficult. And you're playing against all your Big Ten East teams, Big Ten East opponents. And, of course, you have at Wisconsin and Purdue thrown in there as well. So it's too early to tell. And I think a lot of people are up in the air about how this season may turn out, but it's 2020. It's the COVID season. We don't know how it's going to go out. So it could go either way, but really excited to see that Big Ten football is back and we're able to have some sort of season overall. Hopefully it plays through.
Yeah, I think we have maybe the hardest possible schedule when it comes to playing in a Power 5 conference. I mean, some might argue the SEC West. I would tend to agree usually in a normal year, but I think Ohio State is going to be the national champion, and then you add in Michigan and a Wisconsin team and Penn State team. They're both going to be top 10 the entire year. That's something that, not a lot of teams are going to play 3 top 10 teams this year, especially in a shortened schedule. Nebraska fans might argue, they might say they have a harder schedule, but they're Nebraska fans. They're delusional. Anyways, Andrew, so I predicted that we would beat Michigan and lose to Penn State. You said that Penn State's a winnable game. Nathan agrees with you on that. You both agreed on the fact that Penn State is a very winnable game. Actually, Nathan went out and said that IU was going to beat Penn State. You agree with odds makers too. So remember you said they're going to hover around the 500 mark, 4 to 5 wins. The over-under on the season is 4.5 in Vegas. So
yeah.
It's usually good to bet with Vegas. Vegas knows what they're talking about.
Penn State's a winnable game, obviously. Every game's a winnable game. But it's still – until IU shows that they can beat a top team, I'm not going to predict them to beat a top team. That might be wrong of me to say, but when you look at the history, IU hasn't beaten Penn State in a long time.
No, well, they beat them during the Joe Paterno suspension years.
In like the early 2010s, but – since then, against top teams, yes, they've shown improvement significantly under Tom Allen's tenure, but it's just going to need a little bit more for me to actually predict a win for that team.
Absolutely. All right, so we're going to move on into the main topics for tonight. So tonight, obviously, we can't start the football conversation without talking about losing one of our better players on the defense and Marcelino Ball. So, Andrew, looking at the terrible news that came out this week that Marcelino Ball has torn his ACL, will miss the season this year, and I think he injured in practice, if I am correct. Yeah. So who are we looking to replace Marcelino Ball with? Because again, he was one of the mainstays of the defense. He plays that husky position that Tom Allen loves in his defense, is known for his defense. So who are we looking at to replace Marcelino Ball?
Yeah, starting out, this injury is terrible for the Hoosier defense. Anytime you have a significant injury like an ACL or something like that, it's always horrible to see. Hopefully, Marcelino recovers well. He already lost one season due to injury back in 2017, so it's very troublesome to hear that again for a Hoosier player, a veteran who has a lot of impact on the Hoosier defense. Like you said, he was primary part of the Husky position for the Hoosiers defense. He played in 41 games throughout his career, while totaling 201 total tackles. So that's a big missing piece. Monday morning, Tom Allen had a press conference via Zoom, and he brought up that point about Ball being out due to the non-contact injury in practice last week. And he immediately talked about Junior Bryant Fitzgerald going to be the guy to step up for the Hoosier defense into that position. Allen basically said he's already in the starting spot. And looking at that, there's also some other guys for that Husky position who can fit that spot. Allen mentioned DK. Get this name right. DK Bonhomme is the name Tom Allen mentioned, as well as defensive backs Jamar Johnson and Noah Pierre. Johnson, of course, played the spot last season as Ball's backup, and Allen said that he does have the ability to play there. But looking back at Fitzgerald and Ball, the comparison, Fitzgerald transitioning from safety to Husky in the spring, and because of the injury now, they are about the same size, 6 feet tall. Fitzgerald is 11 pounds lighter, going about 209 pounds to compare to Ball's 220. And obviously the hybrid position requires players to be very flexible athletically and be able to cover both the run and the pass, a part of Tom Allen's scheme on the defensive side of the ball. Fitzgerald did have production last season, recorded 27 tackles and 3 pass deflections, and then he had 3 interceptions in 2018. So it's not like you're putting a guy in who does not have any talent whatsoever. Fitzgerald does have production on the defensive side of the ball, and it's really going to be a big part, no matter who's in there. Him, Johnson, it's all going to be a team effort to step up because obviously that defensive side of the ball is talented and has a lot more depth this year. So it's going to be all hands-on effort in order to help replace a big missing piece in Ball. And obviously the leadership part of it too.
Yes.
Leadership is very key for Ball. Looking back, he ever since he was a freshman, sophomore, he played that position, 41 games, like I mentioned. So he had the most experience, and now that's gone. But hopefully he can still be there as a vocal piece, getting guys in the right place. And we all know Tom Allen, the coaching staff, is very key on that position, so they are not going to let it go unnoticed. So as of right now, the position has been accounted for, like what they're going to do next. Only time will tell as practice gets going how Fitzgerald and the rest of the positions, rest of the players in that position group kind of while it out, get going as we head towards October 24th.
Sure, and if I remember correctly, I remember Bryant Fitzgerald playing a bunch last year, but he was playing safety and not Husky position. Am I correct?
Yeah, he transitioned to the Husky in the spring.
Okay, yeah. So Bryant Fitzgerald was on the field last year, but he's going to be playing a different position this year. The rest of the safeties, you're looking at a lot of D-backs out back there who are fighting for time. So this was going to be a topic later on in the show, but we can bring it up now because it just makes sense as we're talking about the defensive backfield as it is right now. And that is cornerbacks coach Brandon Shelby was quoted on a couple things, and then a couple of the DBs were also interviewed. So Shelby was asked of the newcomers, like who are the guys stepping up, and so we want to highlight on this podcast Larry Tracy as a name that you guys need to look out for. Larry Tracy the third. He's from Florida. He's a freshman. Or no, he's not from Florida. Ugh. He's from Indianapolis. I just think everybody on this roster is from Florida. Sorry. It's the Floridian in me. But no,
common
Indianapolis. He's apparently been stepping up in practice. So, Andrew, can you tell me a little bit more about Andrew Tracy and what you've heard? Yeah,
so Tuesday, cornerbacks coach Brandon Shelby had a Zoom call, and he discussed the newcomers like Larry Tracy, the third, as mentioned. And Tracy, he redshirted the 2019 season and got some action in the Eastern Illinois game. That was a blowout in IU's favor. But doing back some research for fans to know, Tracy was a 3-time All-State selection at Decatur Central High School in Indianapolis, and he ended his career with 292 tackles and 8 interceptions while leading his team to a state title championship game appearance. My fault there. And Brandon Shelby was very, very high on Larry Tracy. To quote him himself, he said, quote, "Keeps making plays. As a freshman, he was kind of scatterbrained, but you can understand that. Has locked in, gotten into the college, started to understand the flows of college, and he's locked into football. See a totally different change in him on and off the field, and I'm excited for him in the process. He's going to give himself an opportunity to go play." So those are high remarks about a freshman, sophomore now, who doesn't have much playing time, but he's showing it in practice. And even some of the older guys on the team, Jalen Williams, starting corner, is said he's looking to take Larry Tracy under his wing because Williams was in that position when he was younger, and he knows that Tracy can do it. So very excited to see a lot of young players like Tracy on this defensive side of the ball that can really step up for this Hoosier defense, because we're in COVID. We're in the COVID season now, so anything could happen with the depth chart, and guys are going to have to be ready to step up every single week.
Yeah, the depth in the DBs is really nice. It's actually a luxury that the IU hasn't had in a very long time. You look at Jalen Williams, you look at Tymon Mullen, and then you look at the likes of Larry Tracy, and the rest of the career. There's a couple more that I'm not mentioning.
Yeah, you're missing out on Reese Taylor too.
Yeah, Reese Taylor.
Reese Taylor's going to be a big key, and that secondary. And I have an article hopefully coming out tomorrow for IndianaHQ.com. Check it out. Go see some football content. And I touched on Reese Taylor, Jalen Williams, Tywone Mullen. That's a very solid defensive backfield that you have to help you out against what's probably going to be a very big passing attack this year in the Big Ten, looking at Ohio State and Penn State, et cetera.
Purdue,
Rondale Moore coming back, so that's going to be very key. Although for all of college football, though, it's really exciting to see Rondale come back. A very, very talented player. And I asked Coach Tom Allen about Taiwan this season and how much of a key factor it was going to be for him to step up in his leadership. Yes, he had a great freshman season, but there's also he believes there's room for him to grow. Mm-hmm. And he says, quote, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry. He said, quote, a guy like Taiwan has to step up, not just in his play, but also in his leadership. And that's the beauty of what the team is about, end quote. So that is really key to the season as the defensive backfield, guys like Taiwan, Jalen, and Reese Taylor stepping up to help aid the absence of leadership for Marcelino Ball and obviously get those young guys where they need to be.
Right, obviously. And we got a lot of young guys on this football team. This is still a very young team. You look at, right up in the front of the team, right? Penix, the face of the team, basically is going to be a sophomore. So these are some young guys that are going to be playing for Hoosiers, but very talented nonetheless. So moving on to talent and moving on to talking about Penix, the people that are protecting Penix. And so Allen was asked about the depth of the football team, but obviously Andrew just brought it up. COVID season, you're going to have to, freak situations are going to happen. You're going to have to find depth somewhere. A player might get sick. Oh no. Or be diagnosed positive. So, it's not even going to be a contact injury. It's just this person's not going to be able to play. So you're going to have to find a replacement for him. And then that replacement that would come in and usually fill in minutes for him is going to have to be a replacement. And so there's a look down the pecking order it goes. So Tom was talking about offensive tackles and the offensive line. So Andrew, if you want to quickly cover this, I know he's been talking about the development of Luke Haggard and Chris Bradbury. Am I correct in that?
Yes. Chris Bradbury, yes, you're correct on that, Matt. Looking at the offensive line, obviously you lose 3 key pieces last season.
Right.
As Hunter Littlejohn, Simon Stepaniak, and Coy Cronk are all no longer part of the Hoosiers, obviously because Littlejohn and Stepaniak graduated and then Cronk transferred to Iowa, Big Ten West opponent. However, there's still production from that unit that's going to be coming back for 2020. Caleb Jones, Harry Kreider, and Matthew Bedford. So that is still
Matthew Bedford, by the way.
Yes,
Bedford's a killer.
I know you are stepped up big last season, but obviously that is going to be hard to place, losing those 3 starters on your offensive line. And Allen said, talking about the offensive line, he likes the way the offensive line has been progressing. It was a big concern entering this season and so far early in this preseason camp. But graduate transfer, Dylan Powell from Stanford, we touched on this a while back before COVID times, I believe. Mm-hmm. He's going to be able to add depth to the unit, played 19 games at Stanford. Allen also mentioned he's really encouraged by Luke Haggard and Chris Bradbury's development. Mike Kittick is another young player that's stepping up, according to Allen. And Allen said, quote, the entire offensive line is definitely an area that I would say is a concern. But I feel better than I did a month ago because we've had so many reps now, end quote. And that's the thing about the offensive line is so far Allen's mentioned that the teams hasn't been able to do much contact-wise. They've had helmets only and spider pads, which basically allow for a little bit more hands-on contact and without worrying about injury. And when playing offensive line, there's so much you have to go into reps with contact because obviously you can do things on air like footwork and whatnot, etc. But getting your hands on your opponent, blocking them, whatever it's a reach block, going out and pulling, something like that. It's all about reps with the offensive line. And the more you hit somebody, the more you're going to be able to endure that contact and get more game reps that way. So it's just going to take time for that unit to develop as a whole. I really feel like Tom Allen had a lot of positive comments about the offensive line without necessarily showing a lot of negative in the concern. But right. Obviously the offensive line is one of the most important positions, if not the important position group in football. And so it's just going to take time to see where this unit can go because it's still early in camp. So we're just going to have to see what it's going to be like and see if they can be able to protect Penix and open some holes for Stevie and Samson James in the running game.
Absolutely. All right. So quickly, before we get into our last topic on the podcast tonight, I'm going to go on into who won the week this week. Since Nathan's not here, I am covering it. So the easy one this week is that the women's basketball team in the preseason rankings for ESPN was ranked 17th. Obviously, that's great to be ranked in the preseason. Is awesome. The men's team is probably going to be ranked in the preseason. The women's is ranked in the preseason. That's great. Look, this is a very good women's basketball team. It might be the best women's basketball team, even better than last year's team that should have done extremely well in the NCAA tournament. You're looking at Ali Patberg coming back. You have Jalen Penn, and you add transfer Nicole Cardano Hillary, and then George Mason's all-time leading. She's George Mason's all-time leading scorer. You're going to be really, really good. Daniel Patterson is a Notre Dame transfer that's going to be eligible, and she's a front court player. She'll be replacing some of the minutes Brenna Wise took. So these are very good players that are going to be excellent pieces for the Hoosiers. I believe they're doing counting on the fly here. Yeah, they're the third highest ranked Big Ten team behind Maryland and Northwestern. Of course, Maryland has been dominant in women's basketball recently for the Big Ten. Northwestern is just getting pretty good. Ohio State's also in the top 25, and so is Michigan. So the Big Ten's pretty stacked when it comes to women's basketball, but I think the Hoosiers are going to have an excellent year this year. So that's who won the week this week in IU sports. So quickly, the last topic for tonight is Andrew and I get to have a little bit of fun and go a little bit off the script and just talk about our thoughts on the start of the college football season. I know Tom Allen was asked in his press conference on Monday about what he was looking at around for the other games in the country, and he was talking about, the special teams look a bit rusty. Some of the game management stuff looks a bit rusty, which, if we're reminiscing on last season, you talk about special teams and game management. Some people might have some, less than great memories come up in their head about the Tennessee game and game management and special teams. So it's good to know that Tom Allen is taking a looking and thinking about those things. Andrew, so I'm going to ask you the question that Tom Allen was asked, and that's on the teaching points from games around the country and your opening thoughts on college football being back. The SEC started last week. The ACC has been playing a little bit. I know down here in Florida, everybody's making fun of Florida State for being awful. So, Andrew, thoughts on the start of the football season?
Well, it's obviously great to have college football back. I mean, we all wanted it, and it's nice to see that they have developed plans to hopefully keep the season going. I know some games have been canceled, postponed due to COVID. Hopefully everybody stays healthy. We can have some sort of established college football season. But looking back, I think a lot of the biggest things that I noticed throughout the first couple of weeks is obviously some rustiness, obviously because it was early in the season and the teams didn't have a whole lot of prep. I remember watching the I believe it was the Navy game to start.
Yeah.
And it looked like you could tell they had not had a lot of contact practice or whatnot. Throughout a lot of games this season, teams have been missing tackles, offenses and defenses not being adjusted right. Clock management hasn't been very good for some teams. No. And I think I remember the Middle Tennessee State game a couple weeks ago. There was they had like 40 seconds or something left in timeouts in the half. And they didn't use a timeout. They just let the clock run when they're near their opponent's goal line. So kind of just some blunders we've seen early on in the season. And yes, rust is a part of it because you're not had that time to prep with your team and whatnot. Luckily, IU has going on a month now till the season opener against Penn State to get things kind of going the way they need it to go. And then you look at LSU and Mississippi State last week. I mean, LSU did not look like a 2019 national championship. Obviously, Joe Burrow's not a part of the team anymore, but there are still some key weapons that you expect to have a big impact on that team.
Chase and the like, yeah.
Yeah, and they just didn't look like themselves. And obviously, the scoring picked up in the second half, but Mississippi State came out guns a-blazing and really took it to LSU. And that's one thing I'm really interested in seeing this year is how many big upsets are we going to have because maybe a key player is out because of COVID or just especially in the Big Ten. I mean, this first week, we don't know what could happen. You could walk in to Memorial Stadium in Bloomington and beat Penn State. First win against them since 2014, 2013 or 2014, I believe. So that could be very huge for this program. Tom Allen's always talked about trying to break through and get a big one that they need. Nebraska last year was a very good win, possibly a breakthrough win. Obviously, they went to 8 games and achieved bowl eligibility in the middle of the season, which has not been heard of at IU for a long time.
Right.
And they went to the bowl game, obviously had the loss to Tennessee. So there's a great opportunity for wins this season, no matter who you're playing, no matter what league you're in, who you're playing. One thing to note is that the chase for the college football playoff is going to be very interesting this year. There's been a lot of talk about people wanting to expand it. Of course, that's conversation has been growing ever since the college football playoff was created, obviously. But it's going to be interesting to see how teams like, obviously, Alabama and Clemson are going to be favorites to get in. Ohio State is going to try to make a name for themselves to be in. Notre Dame playing the ACC is very interesting this year, as they've been for years an independent and looked very good in their game last 2 weeks ago against South Florida, I believe.
Yep.
So all around, college football is back and exciting. I'm very happy to have it back. Obviously, NFL as well. I know we're touching on college, but as you can see in my room, Colts background. So very excited for Colts going on this season. So
I'm not going to talk about the Eagles. Nope. I refuse to talk about them. I don't know who they are anymore. I am only Miami Heat now. The other side of my brain that's the Eagles fan, I can't. I'm turned it off for right now.
Well, at least your team didn't lose to Gardner Minshew in Jacksonville in week 1 when they were projected to dominate that game, hey, it's NFL, college football is back. I'm in a good mood. I had fantasy this weekend. Faced Pat Mahomes in both my leagues. He scored 40-plus points, and I still won. Russell Wilson coming through, MVP, ready to go.
I was facing Tyler Lockett in both my leagues, and I lost in both of them thanks to Tyler Lockett. Of course, he has he always has 3 games a year where he gets 40 points, and of course, one of them happens to be the week that I play him. Anyways, but no, I think you brought up the Jacksonville point with the Colts, right, and just playing bad. I think. And that kind of shows, and remember, the NFL did not have their regular preseason this year. I think it shows how important the regular preseason is and kind of getting warmed up. You know, the football players need a little bit of warm up, and you look into college football, and the same thing is happening. They don't have their normal preseason. They don't have their normal practices. The leagues that are starting up early didn't have the normal amount of warm up time. So you look at the likes of Oklahoma that should have beaten Kansas State at home, losing to Kansas State. You look at a team like Texas going into Texas Tech, and not unable to stop Texas Tech until the last darn possession of the game in overtime, where they were finally able to stop them on defense. But that game, by the way, was insane to watch. That was a lot of fun. Really got me warmed up for college football being back.
Georgia Tech upsetting Florida State that first week. I was watching that game.
Ain't much of a
it's still Georgia Tech going against Florida State, though. Florida State at home losing.
I was actually on campus in Florida State, and I think it was 2015 when they lost to Georgia Tech on like the kind of the way the Auburn won, the blocked return on a game-winning attempt on a field goal to win the game. And I was there, and the amount of depression on that campus the next day when I was walking around after they this is when they had Jameis too. It was like Jameis's senior year, and they blew a game against Georgia Tech. It was hilarious. Anyways, but. I that kind of makes me wish that IU was a little bit more of a football school, like that moment right there. Because even though it was like kind of like it's like the same thing with the basketball team, right? Like I wish we were like good both basketball and football. We're getting there in football, slowly but surely. But we got to get the fan culture better. We got to get the fans back in the stands, and hopefully that comes soon.
Yeah, one last thing going on about the college football season, how it's gone so far. And I've not really seen it this much, and I've not seen it so much in college as compared to the NFL. But the injuries to start have been really not really remarkable, but incredible to see how many top name players are out due to injury. Looking locally where I'm at, Indy, you've lost Marlon Mack, torn Achilles, Malik Hooker, Achilles injury. You have Paris Campbell out with the knee injury. You have Michael Pittman apparently had surgery Sunday or Sunday or Monday regarding lower body injury. So, and that was I think it was because obviously they didn't have much time to condition themselves and preparation. And I'm really looking forward to see how that's going to impact the college game. Obviously, IU has a month and whatnot to get yourself conditioned, but you have to remember, because of COVID, they were going in the spring, and then all of a sudden spring was canceled. Then there was rumors about summer coming back. They got started again. Then COVID made them go back off the field. So you've not really had that time to establish your culture regarding conditioning and how you're going to go about that on a day-to-day basis with your team. And we could have a Big Ten season where some injuries happen just because you've not been able to get your body right, and it's not all the players' fault.
Yeah,
I mean the NCAA and the Big Ten, with all the scheduling conflicts, you've not been able to have time to develop your team. So it's going to be very important, especially for IU's case, when you have a lot of depth on your team this year, to hopefully make a run at maybe an upper tier East Division finish, top 3 or 4, something like that.
Yeah,
to make a run against beat teams like Michigan State, who you've not beaten in a while. Games you really want to win that will really help your program. That's going to be key to watch out for as we enter this college football season for the Big Ten and all around college football in general.
Yeah, injuries is crazy right now. Just crazy. I know. The Eagles are ravaged by injuries. The Colts are. The Eagles actually play the 49ers on Sunday night this week, which is just the injury fest, because the 49ers have basically lost all their star players to injuries, like Bosa, Garoppolo, Mostert, like all of them from the Super Bowl last year are injured right now. Ford is not Rick Ford, but I forget their defensive end's name right now. But like everybody's injured on their team. The Eagles have a ton of injuries everywhere on their offensive line and on the defense. So it's crazy.
Really fast, can I get your thoughts on the Heat Lakers finals preview?
Okay, good. I'm glad you asked, because I was going to try to sneak it in.
I haven't gotten to talk to you in a while, so I want to see how.
I am proud of the boys.
Nation was going.
Yeah, Heat Nation. I'm proud of Heat Nation. I'm proud of Jimmy and the boys for making the finals. But if this isn't over in 5 games and the Lakers don't win this, I'll be extremely surprised. Just because when the way the teams match up, the Lakers have so much size, and because of Anthony Davis's ability to shoot and spread the floor as a big man, the Heat aren't going to be able to get to the rim, which that neutralizes Jimmy Butler a lot. And then you look at Bam. Bam's not going to be able to match up against another big. He's going to have to go up against 2 bigs, basically, to get his touches in the paint. It's just a really bad matchup for the Heat. You're going to need games where Duncan Robinson goes off for 30. You're going to need games when Tyler Hero goes off for 30. And I don't think that's just going to happen. As much as I want it to happen for the Heat fan, I'm going to be sitting there watching every game. I'll be there tomorrow night with my – actually, I'll be wearing my LeBron Miami jersey that I have with my Dwayne Wade jersey over it, and then my Heat hat on top. But I don't expect Heat to win this series. Now, if they do win, I'll be pleasantly surprised. But
you want it to at least go to 5, though, right? Because
Lakers
have not gone past 5 in the playoffs so far, and I was really hoping for Denver to at least make it to Game 6, but the Denver Magic is over. Yeah. But very excited that we get NBA Finals and college football going on at the same time. Never had that happen before.
No, that's true. And then I think that the NBA season is got a quick turnaround, right? Like we're talking like 2-3 months, and then all of a sudden we got the whole next season coming up. Not even so.
Yeah, I've heard rumors like it'll probably be a limited schedule next season because you're going to have such a short break. So we could have college basketball, NBA basketball, college football heading into the winter. So it's gonna be a great ride. So hopefully 2020 turns around.
Speaking of it quickly, guys, you asked my opinion on something off topic. I'm gonna ask your opinion for something off topic. Tennessee Titans got positive coronavirus cases. What are your thoughts on that and how they're gonna handle it? Because they just played the Vikings this weekend, right? Correct? And they came back and beat the Vikings. So how is that going to go down?
To be honest, I was really obviously shocked. I'm pretty sure everybody was shocked when they saw that today, but I was expecting the first like lockdown or something to happen earlier amongst teams because we're about to hit week 4 of the NFL season and we're just now getting something. And that's great to see that it took a while for something like that to actually happen. But I think there's still talks like they're going to try to play this weekend, or Tennessee or Vikings are going to try to play this weekend. I don't know. I've not been able to see the reports or anything on that. So very shocking to see that it impacted the NFL when they were going on such a good run of having very little positive tests, if any at all. And it makes me wonder what's going to happen in college football if we get an outbreak like that or something like we've kind of seen at other schools having to postpone games and whatnot, and how it's going to affect the Big Ten, because it can create a dramatic downfall of stuff that can happen, like when it comes to how the season plays out, because you could have a team that get to play their full season, or a team that's undefeated but didn't get to play their full season because of COVID purposes. Right. And that can make an impact on standings, what bowl game you get. If we have a team in the college football playoff, say Clemson or Alabama or a top team all of a sudden has to shut down, but they're undefeated, they may not be able to make a case for themselves. So it's 2020, football season's in the works. It's rolling like a roller coaster. So we're ready to go. Just excited to see football. And October 24th, IU kicks off against Penn State. Hopefully everything goes well. We have some Big Ten football this year.
Yeah. Hopefully we have some Big Ten football this year. That's true. I'm excited and can't wait for these Hoosiers to go up. Again, make sure to look out for Andrew's articles on the website. We'll have them on the podcast over the season, during the season, after previewing games. We can all.
Noah's out. I better be making some more appearances now.
Oh yeah, you are going to make appearances when we celebrate beating Penn State at home to start the season. So that about wraps it up for our 161st episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. Thank you to our live audience. You guys are the best. To hear the fantastic episodes like the one you just heard today, be sure to follow us at IndianHQ to make sure you don't miss any of the future episodes, or go to our website, IndianHQ.com, to find it all in one place. Lastly, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, hit a like button, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast to reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we'll see you next time.